Om Narayanaaya Paripurnagunarnavaya Vishwodaya Sthitilayo Niyatipradaya Jnanapradaya Vibudha Surasaukhya Dukkha Satkaranaya Vitataya Namo Namaste Asidudara Gunavaridhira Prameya Narayana Paratamah Paramatsa Ekah Samshanta Samvidakhilam Jathare Nidhaya Lakshmi Pujantaragata Swarato Pichakre तस्योदरस्थ जगतः सदमन्दसान्द्रस्वानन्दतुष्टवपुषोऽतिरमारमस्य भूत्यै निजाश्रितजनस्य हि सृज्यसृष्टा वीक्षा बभूव परनामनिमेषकान्ते नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये व्यासं वसिष्ठनप्तारं शक्तेः पौत्रमकल्मषम् पराशरात्मजं वन्दे शुकतातं तपोनिधिम् भारतं चातिसुखवान् पञ्चमं वेदमुत्तमं दशावरार्थं सर्वत्र केवलं विष्णुबोधकम् देवं नारायणं नत्वा पूर्णबोधान् गुरूनपि कुर्म श्रीकृष्णगीतायाः भाष्यादुक्तार्थसङ्ग्रहम् हरिः ओम्. Welcome everyone. This is the weekly one session that we do. If anybody is interested in being here on the stage, please do ping for the mic access. What we try to do is that under this Purushottama Yoga Club, we meet every morning to get ourselves familiar with the Bhagavad-Gita shlokas. And that is through repeated parayana, repeated recitation. That is where we are able to locate the words of the Gita properly. Most of us, what we do, tend to do, despite all the great amount of reverence that we generate over the scripture, we tend to gloss over the English translations, and that's good, no doubt. But it's got a lot of limiting effect. The any translation, be it in English or any regional language as well, these days we don't really study in depth. And the purpose is not that we will study here in depth. The purpose is that the more and more familiar we get, you know, these words are known to us. All the words of Sanskrit are our own words. They are in all the Bharatiya Bhashas. And they have multiple different connotations in different contexts. Right? Some of these words, Atma, some of these words are quite common. We keep using them, Vyapara, Ashraya. Many of these words that we keep seeing in Bhagavad-Gita, in Sanskrit in general, are used in the day-to-day parlance by all of us. Right? And they can have multiple different connotations depending on the context. So the purpose is to get ourselves familiar with the repeated chanting, and that's essential. If not by heart, at least get very familiar, be able to see what those words are in the shlokas, right? And then once a week, this is an honest attempt at academically looking at the breakdown of the words, how the words are formed, including some of the namapada, like for example Krishna, Arjuna, Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya, Bhishma. Many of these namapadas that we hear, right? Drona, Karna, many of these namapadas that we hear, the nouns that we hear within Bhagavad Gita as well, they all have some gaunatmaka, some etymological significance, like Arjuna, Arjayati, Krishna, Karshati. So all of these names do have some kind of a significance. Dhananjaya, Dhanam Jayati, Rishikesha, Rishikanamishaha. Many of these words, almost all, like not just many, right? All the words have a gaunatmaka significance, and we tend to make sense of what the message is coming through. Because at the end of the day, at the end of each chapter, we call this as the Yoga Shastra, right? There is a lot contained, and we want to equip ourselves with the basic word by word understanding, so that then when we do the repeat chintana of the same shlokas in our daily parayana, the different arthas will start to unravel themselves, like they just open up themselves for us. And to that extent, in some cases, we also look into what could have been spoken in some of the bhashyas. So this is an academic study that we do, and the reason why we do it in Clubhouse, a social media platform, is to invite, if there is any shortcoming in the way we have presented, if there is any other alternate thought or further thoughts to be added that will perhaps enhance the learning of each one of us here, we would like to invite that as well. So please do ping for the mic access through the course of this study. This is something that we started in the month of November, December last year. So far, we have completed till the 5th chapter. Last week, we stopped at the 5th chapter. The last shloka, very beautiful shloka. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhutanam jnatva mam shanti mrichati. He gives the very beautiful message that one who understands that Bhagavan is the sarva yajnanam tapasam bhoktaram iti. He is the consumer of all the yajnas and all the tapas. You and I may be doing the tapas, but the consumption of the results of that is finally reaching the mouth of the Brahma. You and I may be performing our own yajnas, and yajna is not just the one sitting in front of the Homa Kunda, right? Our life, our Vihita karma filled life, the Dharmotpatti life, that is basically part of the yajna, because we were all created as part of the grand yajna that is still live and direct. Saha yajnaha prajaha srishva pura uvacha prajapati. This is something that we hear in the third adhyaya. Currently, all our activities that is done in a very, very dharma-baddha way, in our own vyaparas and things, that is all part of that yajna. And there are different types of yajna we got to see in the fourth adhyaya, right? Dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, swadhyaya yajna, jnana yajna. Even our breath intake and expiration, right? So respiration is also yajna. Prana, pana, samadhi. So pranayama is also a yajna, because when we look into it very subtly, it's an interconnected ether, right? What I inhale is primarily exhaled by somebody, and what they inhale is primarily inhaled by somebody. So the inhalation exhalation is basically of the shared ether. Maybe between the plant life and the animal life, you can easily see that, right? Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, carbon dioxide in, oxygen out. The cycle is a perennial cycle, right? So it's a yajna, it's an interconnected, universal consciousness we are all part of. So anything that we do is part of the grand scale of things, which was established at the time of creation. When we were all created, that yajna also came out, right? So sarva yajnanam sarva tapasam bhoktaram, and so sarva loka maheshwaram, being the Maheshwara, the supreme lord of all the lokas. Suhridam sarva bhutanam, and also the kind-hearted friend in all the living beings. Samam, nirdosham hi samam brahma is something that we hear by Krishna himself, like in the fifth adhyaya. That kind of a Brahma in the heart of everyone. Jnatva mam shanti mrichati. By knowing that, one will attain shanti. Now, see, this is a very interesting point that we are getting into, right? The question from Arjuna is simple. It is still the first shloka of the fifth adhyaya. The fifth chapter begins with a question from Arjuna, and that is what we are continuing to see right now, being addressed by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. The question is the karmanushta, path, the nishkama karma path good for me, or is sannyasa good for me? Right? So because you praise sannyasa once, so Krishna, then you praise yoga. Yoga is karma yoga. Whenever we hear the word yoga, by default, I think we will understand that to be karma yoga, right? So you praise both sannyasa and karma, oh Krishna, tell me which is better between the two. And this, what is better for me, has been a consistent theme from Arjuna. Shreya, nacha shreyo no pashyami tatva swajanamavahe, tanme kshemataram bhavet. So wherever he sees a lot of worried look. He seems to have a lot of worried look about what is Shreyaskara for him. Yachreyasyan nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadhimam came in the second chapter. Third chapter also he spoke the same thing. What is Shreyaskara for me? Like the fifth chapter also we hear. Yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunichitam. But Shreya, what is good for me, has been a consistent theme, and I think that will be permanently quelled. That will be. Now, after this, we will not hear Arjuna asking that question. Tell me what is Shreyaskara, right? He asked that question in the second chapter. He asked that question in the third chapter, Yena Shreyo Hamapnuyam, something like that. And in the fifth chapter also, it begins with that question, what is Shreyaskara for me? What is good for me? Now, whenever we hear what is good, right, we have to understand that we keep hearing the word yoga, yoga, yoga. Yoga, yogya, yogyata, it's all capability, right? I mean, a way out for achieving something that we intend to, right? It's a upaya. When we look at the Kalpadruma, the word dictionary, yoga is also upaya, right? Udyoga is the way out to earn my livelihood. Upayoga is the way out. upaya for me to understand the utility of a, see, the same smartphone can work differently for different people. Even understanding the Upayoga is a yoga. There is a yoga in it, right? Not everyone can do the same amount of magic with Excel, same amount of magic with Word, same amount of magic with PowerPoint. Like, the tool is the same. The yoga, the level of yoga, the yogyata of the person using can be different, right? So one of the fundamental meaning of the word yoga has to be the capability, right? The yogyata, right? So in yoga, whenever we hear the word yoga, Ashtanga yoga is quite popular, right? And this is the juncture. I think if one of us, some of us do also study the Ashtanga as an augmentative study, these chapters, this chapter number 5, 6, will serve brilliantly, right? There is a lot of back and forth we can always look into. But coming back, if some of us have done the study of the Ashtanga, even glossed over some of it, we understand the last part is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, right? We hear the last parts of the Ashtanga is the dharana. Dharana is basically bringing on, internalizing some thought, what we weigh. Dharana is what we weigh, right? We weigh a thought. What is the thought was established by Sri Krishna in the final shloka of the 5th adhyaya. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shanti mrichati. The kind of thinking that we need to start internalizing, right? It started from the point where he started saying, Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiyah lipyatena sapapena padmapatramivamsa. The 5th adhyaya has a lot of this Brahmi sthiti explained and Brahma nirvana sthiti explained, right? And final upasamhara, the final debrief ends at the last shloka where he says, do the dharana of this thought. The thought is Sarva Yajnanam, Sarva Tapasam, Bhoktaram, Cha, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Cha, Sarva Bhutanam, Suhridam, Cha, Tam iti Matva, Tam iti Jnatva, Bhagavantam iti Jnatva. Know him to be that ultimate kind-hearted person inside each one of us. He is the one who is enjoying the benefits, like even this talk. If this talk ends up being a nice talk, some of us will learn something, some of us will take it forward and pass it on to some more people. See, at the end of the day, what I am speaking is also, Bhashya Dukkara Sangraham, right? All the Sangraha of different Bhashyas of the great Jagat Gurus that have come. Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada to Acharya Ramanuja to Acharya Madhva to different Acharyas have come forward and given a lot of great explanations, and that has added to that Brahma, a good Brahma, right? I mean, all the good deeds have added, and we are the posterity, right? We piggyback on that, inherited knowledge, and we further it. Like, we keep, and this 5,000-year-old scripture, so amazingly has been carried forward only because of that great act. So this is all yajna, right? I mean, this is all the consumer of all these good deeds are eventually Brahma. All the yajnas, all the tapas, at the end of the day, whatever yields good results, the consumer is that Brahma, because Brahma remains consistent. We all might come and go, have different pitch stops and things like that. So that Brahma remains consistent, right? So the consumer of all this yajna tapas is that Brahma. We have to do that dharana, right? The one who's the Sarvaloka Maheshwara is that Brahma. We need to do that dharana. And the one who is the Nirdosham Samam Brahma, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, that is Brahma. Iti Jnatva, Shantim Richati. He will attain Shanti. Now, understand this word, sir. We've heard the word Shanti quite a number of times, and I think we keep on reminding ourselves the word Shanti has the roots in Sham, Shamata. Right? Sham is mind control, Shama, Dama. Dama is the sense control, Shama is the mind control. We keep here Upashama. There are different types of Shama that we use. But Shanti is not like the way we use the word in today's context. Today's context, we kind of tend to spoil the meanings, right? We tend to say, ek, do, pek pila de re, shant ho jayega. That's not the way Shanti has to be understood. Shanti is got a lot of mind control. And Jnatva Mam Shanti Mruchati. He will attain Shanti by doing this. And that is the Dhyana. Dhyana is the next chapter. The 6th chapter is called the Dhyana Yoga in many versions. It's also called the Atma Sanyama Yoga, the mind control, yoga of the mind control, or the yoga of the restraint, whichever way we want to see it, right? So Atma Sanyama, the Samyak Yama, properly controlled, Atma. Okay, that's the kind of a thing that we hear. And he gave a hint, couple of hints he gave. Sparsham Kritva Bahibahya. And I think the last three shlokas of the previous Adhyaya, I think shloka number 27, 28, in that he gave a hint to what could be the secret for developing this dhyana, developing this tranquility, developing this stoic nature of keeping the mind under control, unwavering mind with the dharana of the thought that he gave, right? The secret is whenever the mind wanders away, he said, Bhuvor Madhye, like he says, Sparshan Kritva Bahir Bahyan, keeping the external contacts in the exterior side only. Okay, Chakshushchaivantare Bhuvo, okay, all the attention being drawn to the middle of between the two eyebrows. Chakshuhucha eva antare bhruvoho, between the two eyebrows, which is the Ajna chakra, right? If some of us will have some understanding of how the Kundalini chakras are laid out. So we have the Ajna chakra, the sixth chakra, which is exactly behind the middle point of the two eyebrows, where we normally keep the bindi. Okay, that is the Ajna chakra, which is called the Guru chakra, which is the pineal gland, right? All our chemical excretions, they are directed from that point, right, for the body. The science today understands that to be the pineal gland, right? Bhruvor madhye, like, chakshushchaivantare bhruvoho, pranapano samav kritva, keeping the breath completely balanced. We shouldn't feel any bit of rush of blood, palpitations, nothing. Like, we have to keep them as calm as possible. And this is where any meditation begins with pranayama, and every pranayama begins with focusing on the breath. Many a times we breathe in and breathe out even without any thought to it, right? But when we give a thought to it, A, we will understand the interconnectedness of this ether, and B, we will be able to realize how steadily we can come back, right? How undisturbed we can come back, because that is when we start realizing the amount of disturbance. So at the end of the fifth chapter, there are some nice messages that come. One is he gives a hint, he drops a hint how to achieve the dhyana, and B, he also gives a very good clue on what kind of a dharana to do. Now we move on to the first shloka of the sixth adhyaya. Right now, that is a launch, because it's all about achieving shamatha. The sixth adhyaya is all about achieving samatha, and a lot of bhashyakaras, a lot of commentators also say this is kind of moving into the state of samadhi. A lot of explanation is also given to what the state of samadhi is. And samadhi, the way we understand, can be different. But samadhi, in a very simplistic sense, samadhi. Sama is equal. Dhi is the buddhi. And that is a concept that is being repeated from the second chapter. Sthitadhi, Vyavasayatmika buddhi, Sthira buddhi, Samadhi. Like, all of these are equivalent terms. Like, they're all the same. Right? So these terms keep repeated often. But people say that it tends to take us to the level of samadhi. Okay, now samadhi, a lot of people think that the grave is also called samadhi today. I think a lot of misnomers are there. Well, they may not be misnomers, but because contextually every word tends to throw open multiple different interpretations, we tend to get too strongly associated with one or two of these terms, right? And this is exactly the reason why it's always good not to just gloss over the translation, but understand these terms, in our own mother tongue, and then try contemplating. But nonetheless, some of the commentators also see this Atma Sanyama Yoga, or the Dhyana Yoga, the sixth chapter, is the thing that will lead us to the state of Samadhi, that Sthira Buddhi, that we need to be in our pursuit of achieving excellence. At the end of the day, it's all about being Yogya people, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about capable enough to face the different twisted circumstances that are thrown to us by this life. The whole premise of this Bhagavad-Gita is that Bhishmacharya can fall. Infallible can fall. Arjuna can get into despondency. Arjuna can get into dejection. He never got into dejection before. He never got into dejection after. Two of the most unlikeliest events have led us to the situation where Bhagavan has to give us this discourse, right? So it's primarily designed to, Yoga Shastra is primarily to help us understand how to be Yogya people, okay, to face those, challenging situations that life throws on us, right? At the end of the day, it's all about facing life, in the Bhagavad Chintana for the sake of the good. Many a times we get dejected, take some extreme steps. A lot of missed opportunities with that, right? A lot of missed opportunities in terms of what we could have done nicely to add to this Adi Yajna, the Yajna that Brahma started, Saha Yajna Prajaha Srishtva, right? Purovacha Prajapati. That's what we hear in the third Adhyaya. We were all created as part of a great Yajna. So there is a specific karma for all of us. There is a specific duty for all of us. When we get some, undesirable situations in life, like Bhishma falling, Arjuna getting into despondency. Imagine Arjuna gets into despondency and the inertia continues. The entire Pandava army will rally behind him. Oh, Arjuna is down, we are also down. And they will lose the war in the first day, right? So we have to overcome the situations and then kind of, be part of this yajna and do whatever our limited role is, nimitta role is, the incidental roles are. We have to do them with a complete zest, right? So and for that we need the samabuddhi. We need to have that stability of the buddhi. We cannot lose that, right? So that's the samadhi. And when we get into the areas like Kriya Yoga and all, there are people who then break it down into Samprajnata, Samadhi, Asamprajnata Samadhi, Savikalpa, Nirvikalpa. There are different ways in which people define them. If people are interested, we can have some discussions around those topics as well. At 9:30, we will adjourn by looking at all the shlokas. 9:30 onward, we can keep some Q&As. But nonetheless, let's move on. This is the first shloka of the sixth adhyaya. Let's see what the words are primarily trying to tell us. Hari Om. Shri Bhagavan-uvaच अनाश्रितः कर्मफलं कार्यं कर्म करोति यः स सन्न्यासी च योगी च न निरग्निर्न चाक्रियः. So click on the link given under the room title by Shraddhaji. You'll be taken to this shloka. Right? It's a decent website created by Dr. Sampadananda for the Aurobindo Institute. We will make use of this for whatever it provides us. And then wherever we think the meaning need not be taken at the face value, we will provide our 2 cents around it, right? So click on this. We see the shloka. Shri Bhagavan-uvacha Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yah sasanyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyah. Okay, you scroll down a little bit, we see a section called Padacheda. Padacheda is where we get the breakdown of every word, right? Anashritaha karma phalam karyam karma karoti yah saha sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnihi na cha akriyah. So these are the words. There are a couple of sandhis, right? Saha sannyasi becomes sa sannyasi, right? And cha akriya becomes cha kriya, right? So there are some sandhis. The words tend to change, their structure. But nonetheless, this is the breakdown of the words. When we unjumble these words and put them into a proper prose order, that is what is given under this section just above called Anvaya. Anvaya reads, Shri Bhagavan-uvacha. Hey Arjuna, this is all being referred to Arjuna, right? Because it's a continuous. See, Bhagavan never stopped. Okay, from the previous chapter where we ended with the last shloka that said, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvadoka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Jatva Mam Shanti Brichati Anashrita Karma Phalam Karyam Kar. So it's a continued conversation. There is no break. But because we have seen that as a separate chapter and this to be a separate chapter, there is a forced chapter break being given. We begin with Bhagavan Vacha, but Bhagavan has been speaking. It's not like he especially started speaking. Only thing is, in this one long conversation, what we saw in the previous chapter was more of an external purification, which is sannyasa, selflessness, which is doing things for the sake of the broader good. And that's not easy. To do that, you need an internal purification. That is the dhyana. So we see now the antaranga shuddhi. After seeing the bahiranga shuddhi, about the Brahmicity, the Brahma Nirvana state, and things like that. Now we get to see the Antaranga Shuddhi. Right? It's not easy, right? To be a good team player, team is filled with selfish performers. Now, how to become a good team? That becomes a oxymoron, right? Being a good team player in a selfish-minded set of people, that becomes a conflict, right? So you need to have external purification where you deliberate and force yourself to do it for the greater good, and repeatedly doing that, you also get into a stage of internal purification where you really don't really bother about those petty politics and petty opportunistic reactions from some people and things like that. I mean, you do it for the long run. Like, you don't really look at it from short-term perspective. So external purification is needed with a lot of deliberate attempts, and then it has to lead into internal purification. That is all about staying stoic, staying tranquil. That dhyana, that that tranquility is that internal purification. So Bhagavan Uvacha, the Anvaya reads like this: Karma phalam anashritaha yaha karyam karma karoti सह सन्यासी च योगी च na niragnihi na cha akriyaha. Right? What does that mean? For that, we need to click on this link called the dictionary on the same page on the top. Okay, hey Arjuna, Bhagavan Vacha, Bhagavan is saying, hey Arjuna, karma phalam anashritaha, without resorting to the karma phala, without resorting to the fruits of the action. Yaha, the one who karyam karma karoti. He keeps doing his karya, he keeps performing his duties, he keeps doing the work that has to be done. Saha sannyasi cha yogi cha. He alone is the sannyasi and he alone is the yogi. Now, sannyasi is the person who has renounced. Right? What has he renounced? He doesn't renounce action. He only renounces the attachment to the work, attachment to the effects of the work, attachment to the ownership of the work, attachment to the causation, the causal factor of the work. Right? So he gives up the attachment to the work, all forms of attachment. But the work is still karmani abhipravrittahapi. He is engrossed in the work, right? Saha sannyasi cha yogi cha. Yogi is a karma yogi, right? Karma yogi is primarily somebody who does a nishkama karma, right? Now, there can be debate when we look into multiple commentaries. People tend to pose this confusion. Some books will say yogi means a dhyana yogi because this chapter is called the dhyana yoga, and some people say yogi means a karma yogi, like how I'm seeing. I mean, they both are the same, right? Let's understand the word yoga. Yoga is capability, yogya. Being yogya is a yogi, right? So yogi, yogya. Now, to become a capable person, you got to be, relentlessly industrious in nature, assiduous in nature, and you got to be that stoic person as well. You can't say it's a stoic yogi or a assiduous yogi. They both are the same. At the end of the day, on a long run, they both converge into the same path. They become inseparable. You have to be stoic, you have to be assiduous. You can't be stoic without assiduity, you can't be assiduous without the stoicness, right? It needs to go hand in hand, right? So, saha sannyasi, cha yogi cha, na niragnihi, not the one who does not have fire, not the one who does not light the fire, right? Niragnihi can be without fire, right? The one without fire is perhaps the one who does not light the fire or who does not possess the fire. Where do we have the fire? Fire is in the belly, right? Our cauldron, the homa kunda. If there is a homa kunda for the yajna that we all perform, the cauldron is the stomach, right? Stomach is where the sound comes out. When I say ah looks like the sound is coming from the throat, but when you say from the gut is primarily in the stomach, right? That is the cauldron, the homa kunda, both for the shabdatmaka prapancha. The world that we understand is in twofold, right? One is the Shabdatmaka Prapancha, the world that we understand through the words that we hear, through the books, through the scriptures, through what people tell us in the classrooms. Like, for example, we never saw the apple falling on, Newton's head, right? But we understand gravity, right? We understand the gravity, though it has been experienced by somebody, but somebody has narrated it in the classroom. We heard it, right? So the world that we understand through the word Shabdatmaka Prapancha and the Rupatmaka, the one that we can experience, the touchy-feely world, right? Both the worlds, they origination of both the forms of word, the Shabdatmaka Prapancha as well as the Rupatmaka Prapancha. The fire of the Prapancha is in the belly, right? Action, it's all to do with action. Vaishwanaraha. So Niragnihi can be understood to be the one who does not do action, or the one who does not perform yajna. And when we say yajna, again sankalpika, right? Sankalpika yajna. Niragnihi is also yajna, the one who does not perform yajna. And yajna, the sankalpika, the trailer of the yajna is what we sit in front of the homakunda. But the real yajna is our life, day-to-day life, right? At the end of the day, that is what we learned in the fourth chapter. There are different types of yajna. Daivameva pare yajnam yoginah paryupasate brahmagnava pare yajnam yajnenaivo pajuhvati. So we heard different types of yajna being called out by Bhagavan. And then, shrotraadin indriyan yanye sanyamagni shujuhvati. So, our experiences, the sense experiences are also into the fire, Agni. And Shabdadin Vishayan Anya Indriya Vishu. So, there are different, senses, sense organs being burnt in the fire of control, and different experiences being burnt in the fire of senses. And then Dravya Yajna, Sapo Yajna, Yoga Yajna, Satapare, Swadhyaya, Jnana Yajnascha. There are different types of Yajna, right? So, that is also Agni. The Yajna cannot happen without Agni, right? All of this. And Yajna, when we say Agni, Yajna starts with Ya. Ya is Yatna, Prayatna, Yatata, effort, right? Without effort, without karma. Na Niragnihi can be understood to be without karma, right? Without fire. Na Akriyaha, and not the one who does not do the works. The one who does not have the fire, nor the one who does not do the work. See, it nicely falls now into place. So, hey Arjuna, karma phalam anashritaha, the one who does not having taken refuge under resorting to the effects of the action, the one who keeps performing action, performing his duties. Now, whenever we hear the word karma, we need to understand that to be the vihita karma, the ordained set of actions, right? In all our actions can be broadly classified into fourfold: nitya karma, naimittika karma, kamartha karma, and nishiddhartha karma. Nitya is the set of incidental actions like breathing, like sleeping, like some of these works are incidental in nature. Then there are naimittika, which is the ordained vihita karma, right? So things that are do's and don'ts. Things are governed by the do's and don'ts, right? You have to do this, you shouldn't do this, you should stay away from this. As a father, I have certain duties. As a child, I have certain duties. As a son, I have certain duties. Each one of us have different duties. As a student, I need to be studying. As a grihastha, I need to be earning, right? As a family man, I need to be earning. We have to perform our karma, the dharmatmaka karma, vihita karma. So those are the naimittika karma, nimitta, where we are only incidental. In whatever we do, it's only incidental. Right? We are all doing it for the larger good. Whether I father a child also, it becomes for the sake of a larger cause, not my personal cause, right? So nitya karma, naimittika karma, kamartha karma. A lot of times we do a lot of things for sense gratifications, right? For fulfilling our own desires, the indulgences like binge watching, slothing on the couch, many things that we do, which are primarily kamartha karma. And then nishiddha. Nishiddha is basically forbidden. What is absolutely forbidden for me? And forbidden acts can be subjective. Nothing is absolute. What is forbidden for me need not be forbidden for somebody else. Like for example, my child has exam tomorrow, and for me it's a weekend, right? So watching TV, I can't say it's forbidden, right? Watching TV is forbidden for her, but not for me. So forbidden act, like when we look into the varnashrama, a brahmana can beg because he has to focus on other things like adhyayana, adhyapana, yajana. So he has to focus on other things. So diksha is absolutely fine for a brahmana, but it is forbidden for the other three, right? Killing is acceptable for a kshatriya because he is the one who kshatrayata, he is the one who protects us from danger. So killing is acceptable for a kshatriya, but it is forbidden for the other three, right? Similarly, vaishya, accumulation of wealth is acceptable for a vaishya because he has to take care of the society, right? So he has to accumulate wealth, definitely, right? So, but for others, hoarding is forbidden. They can't. enjoyment is fine for a Shudra. Like, indulging and things like that, drinking, many sensual activities are acceptable for a Shudra, but not for the other three. So when we see, Sukha, like, seeking pleasure is absolutely fine. So what is forbidden is also very, very subjective. Right? So, naimittika karma. Karma, whenever we say karma, it should be the nimitta karma or the vihita karma, the ordained actions or the actions that become incidental as part of what we are being, like, at this current phase in our life. As a child, I have different karma. As a adult, I have different karma. As a later adult, I have different karma. As a student, I have different karma. So our karma, the dharmartha karma, the vihita karma are different. So whenever we hear the word karma, I think we have to internalize that. It is the vihita karma that we talk about. So the one without taking refuge, without depending on the results of any action, keeps performing his duties. He is the sannyasi and he is the yogi, not the one without fire, not the one who does not do his work. That's a simple answer. I think he is back to answering the same question from Arjuna. Oh Krishna, you praise yoga once, you praise sannyasa once. Tell me which is better. I think he just put it to an end here. He put the final nail in this entire explanation that sannyasa in yoga is the same, because the same guy who does the work without any attachment to the fruits, who does not take any shelter under those results and keep performing his action, he is the sannyasi, he is the yogi, right? You will see what Aurobindo translation says. Go down. It says, the blessed Lord says, whoever does the work to be done without resort to its fruits, he is the sannyasi and the yogi, not the man who lights, nor the person without sacrificial fire, okay, and does not the works. Okay, not the one who does not light the sacrificial fire, nor the person who does not do his works. I think the translation goes a little here and there. I can't even read it verbatim. Please bear with that. But yeah, that's what it means, right? The one who keeps performing his duties without resorting to the results, without any expectations or attachment to the results. Expectations are there, but without attachment to the results, right? So he is the person who is a sannyasi and a yogi. Because both are good. Nishchaya sakarav both. Both sannyasa and yoga are excellent. For Arjuna's question, what is good for me? And that is still being addressed, right? He is not deviating away from the context. Krishna samastaguna sampurna. He is absolutely perfect. So he does not deviate. He is still well within the context. So with that, we move on to the next shloka. It says, Yam sanyasamit prahur yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. Yam sanyasamiti prahur yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sanyasta sankalpa yogi bhavati kaschana. Let's see what the Padacheda says. Scroll down a little bit. Yam sanyasam iti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahi asanyasta sankalpa yogi bhavati kaschana. I think only one sandhi here. Now he asanyasta, hya sanyasta. He becomes hya. It's natural. If we keep repeating hiya, it becomes hya. So it's a compounded sound, right? So we'll see what the anvaya, the prose order sounds like. Hey Pandava, right? Again using the word Pandava for Pandava is a buddhi. So whenever we hear the word Pandava, we have to remind ourselves he is trying to establish the faculty of intellect. Okay, use your buddhi, use your intellect. Hey Pandava, yam sanyasam iti prahuhu tam yogam vidhi. He asanyasta sankalpaha na kaschana yogi bhavati. What does that mean? For that we click on the top, we click on dictionary. Hey Pandava, oh Panduputra, oh son of Pandu. Yam sanyasam iti prahuhu. What is known as, what is called renunciation or sannyasa? Tam yogam vidhi. Know that to be yoga. That is yoga. Right? Yam sannyasam iti prahuhu. Whatever has been called sannyasa, tam yogam iti vidhi. Know that to be yoga only. Again, Coming back, what is good, right? Sannyasa or yoga, they both are the same. And he's driving the same point. He asanyasta sankalpaha. Indeed, for verily the one without resolve for renunciation, without a resolve for asanyasa, without any idea, without any preparedness to renounce, na kaschana yogi bhavati. He shall never become a yogi. He shall not become a yogi. Basically, what is being called as sannyasa is yoga only, O Arjuna, O Panduputra. Okay, without a resolve to renounce, you will never become a yogi. Be prepared to give up, not yours. And this is where I think the thought of sarva yajna tapasam bhoktaram krishnam iti jnatva, being that paramatma, always believing in that, paramatma tattva, always doing for the sake of the paramatma, you know, it doesn't stop us from burning with the gas pedal in full throttle. So we will go with the full throttle, but not for ourselves, for the sake of Bhagavan, right? So we will do it nicely because we want to be nice to him. I mean, we want to do his work, right? We are all his children, right? We are all his adhina. We are all under him. We are all under his shelter, right? And we will do it full throttle. We keep the gas, feet on the gas pedal in full throttle, and no expectations. Whatever comes from his side is my prasada. That's the kind of so when we want to internalize the team spirited, activity of us, for the sake of the larger good, this is exactly what we need. Without the resolve to renounce, okay, there is no way anybody can become a yogi. There is no way anybody can become capable. When we see the stories of people like Steve Jobs, they walked out of many tempting deals. That made them capable. They had the belief in their ideas. They could any time drop their temptations. They had no shelter. Under any, they were not resorting to any particular result. They just wanted to do things the way they thought it has to be done. Right? They were just looking at what's the right thing to do. Right? So let's see what Aurobindo translation says. What they have called renunciation or sannyasa, know it to be in truth yoga, O Pandava. For none becomes a yogi who has not renounced the desire will in the mind. Okay, or who has not got the desire to renounce in his mind. You see, the interpretation can go a little here and there. Okay, one cannot become a yogi who does not take the resolve to renounce, who does not have the will to renounce. You should be able to renounce anytime. That's the kind of an impression that we get. Let us see, let's move on now. Let's move on to the next shloka. Very beautiful one. Arurukshormuneryogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudhasya tasyaiva shamah karanamuchyate. Very beautiful. Arurukshormuneryogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudhasya tasyaiva shamah karanamuchyate. Right? What does the Padacheda give us? Arurukshoh munehe yogam karma karanam uchyate yoga rudhasya tasya eva shamah karanam uchyate. Right? A couple of sandhis. Arurukshoh munehe becomes arurukshor munehe. Munehe yogam, muner yogam. Okay. Yoga arudhasya becomes yoga rudhasya. Tasya eva becomes tasyaiva. So these are some of the four sandhis, right? Compounding of the letters. You will see when we unjumble these words, we get the prose order in the section called Anvaya. Just above, we have this Anvaya. Yogam arurukshoho munehe karma karanam uchyate. Yoga arudhasya tasya shamaha eva karanam uchyate. What does that mean? For that, we click on the dictionary. Yogam arurukshoho munehe. For the muni. Muni is a word that comes from mananat. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana, right? Keeps, keeps relentlessly performing the action. Shravana, manana, mune. Muni is the one who atma mananat, something like that. Muni, the one who keeps on working towards the same cause. So for a Muni who is Yoga Arurukshu is Arodum Ichu, the one who desires to climb up, one who desires to ascend, the one who seeks to go higher. Because see, Arjuna, very, very valid, right? Arjuna has been asking, what is good for me? Yena shreyo ham apnuyam, by what I will get better. So if you are desirous to go higher, that makes you Arurukshu. Right? If you are Arurukshu and you are a Muni who keeps on working for it, and what do you go higher with? You want to go higher in your capability. Yogam Arurukshu. You want to go higher and higher in yoga. Now, whether that is Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, we will see that. But nonetheless, yoga is primarily Upaya. Yoga is basically having the Yogyata, right? Being a yogi, right? So, if you have the desire to go higher in your yoga, which is basically if you want to go higher and higher in your Yogyata, in your capability, and you're a Muni who can relentlessly act upon these things. Karma karana muchyate. Actions are the reason behind that. Okay, actions are the cause for it. The karana can be reason, can be cause. Right? So the only way you can go higher in your capability is by action. Simple. Right? The only way to go higher and higher in terms of your capability of facing life is through your karma, is through your ordained duties. Right? And yoga rudhasya tasya yoga rudhasya, of that person who has become yoga rudha. Yoga rudha can be loosely understood to be somebody who has ascended in the yoga. Arudha is ascended. Yoga is in yoga. Yoge arudha, yoga rudha, tasya, yoga rudhasya. Right? So, of a person who has ascended in yoga. Now, what does that mean? We will see in the next shloka, because Krishna often, whenever he uses some complex term, he provides the explanation also. Either him directly giving the explanation without being asked for it, or if he has not done that, we will see Arjuna asking that question. So that is something that we can expect throughout Bhagavad-Gita. And that is where this conversation makes very, very interesting, right? Between Arjuna and Krishna. The concepts, if they throw some crazy concept, they will explain. They both will, in tandem, they will help us understand. We, as a third parties witnessing to their conversation, we have a treat because of the way they interact with each other. So, Yoga Rudhasya literally means the one who has ascended yoga. And what does that mean? We will see in the next shloka, right? So, Yoga Rudhasya Tasya Shama Eva Karana Muchyate, which means if you have ascended in yoga, Shama. Shama is the self-mastery or mind control. In simplistic sense, peace. It says, you go further in that line, it says peace. Peace is the mental peace, mental calmness, right? Shama is that mind control, absolute mind control, the stoicness. So if you want to stay ascended in the state of yoga, it can only be possible through shamata, through shama, through the stoicness, through the dhyana, which is what he mentioned, the shanti. In the end of the 5th chapter, he speaks about shanti mruchati. You will attain that shanti. And you will attain that shanti primarily to remain in the state of yoga. Remain, ascended in the state of yoga. Yoga rudhasya. Right? Very carefully when we look into this. Karana muchyate. Very beautiful, right? So this is perhaps the reason why Arjuna doesn't ask anymore, what is good for me? He is now logically telling, boss, without resorting to the fruits of the action, the one who performs them relentlessly is a sannyasi and a yogi, not the one without the fire, not the one without his duties. And he starts from there, right? And beautifully he goes on to explain, right? Krishna, he says, and then whatever is known as sannyasa for you, understand that to be yoga only. Because without the will to renounce, you will not become a yogi. And now he says, if you desire to climb up the path of yoga, you have to do work. Without work, there is no way to climb up. And this is something that he mentioned, but as a passing comment, Nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati. The 3rd chapter, by just renouncing things, you will not attain any siddhi. You will not attain any mastery. Siddhi is basically mastery. You will become an achiever kind of a thing, right? You will not achieve the siddha, the preparedness, the fitness to be something. Siddha is fitness to use. Like the quality, we define quality as fitness to use, right? So similarly, siddhi is also fitness to use. You become fit for something, right? So you'll not become a siddhi by just giving up things, right? You have to do action. Action is very, very important. This has been a consistent message coming along, but he's now doing a final summary of this, so that this is the last time Arjuna is going to ever ask, tell me what is good, right? Either this or that. That confusion is gone. Next, it doesn't stop questions from Arjuna, but the questions from Arjuna after this are much more rounded, much more mature, and I think we have a lot of respect from now developed for Arjuna for the kind of questions that he will ask, right? But nonetheless, now in the third shloka, Krishna is telling very clearly, if you really want to know how you want to go higher and higher, what is good for you, if you really want to go higher in the path of yoga, do your duty. If you want to stay there, get shama, get shanti, get that mind control, right? Then we will go on. Let's see what Aurobindo translation says, right? Aurobindo translation, it says, for a muni, for a sage. See, sage again is, we shouldn't look at these translated words. Muni is mananath, one who relentlessly. Sage, we have a different cartoonish impression, right, of what a sage is. Right? Let's keep it away. For a muni who wants to ascend the hill of yoga, whose desire, Rukshuhu is desire of ascension, right? Arodhum Ichuhu, the one who wants to climb up, right? One who seeks to climb up. So the one who seeks to climb up the path of yoga, action is the only cause. And for the same Muni who has got there and want to remain at the top of yoga self-mastery is the cause. Shamatva, self-control is the cause. Right? That's what we get together. We now move on to the next shloka. Right? Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rudhas tadochyate. So on the website, when you click on next, we come to the fourth verse. Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rudhas tadochyate. Now he's explaining the term yoga rudha that he mentioned there, right? What is it to be there as a yoga rudha, one who has ascended in yoga, right? First we'll see the padacheda, the word by word breakdown. Yada hi na indriya artheshu na karmasu anushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga arudha tada uchyate. There are quite a few sandhis. Na indriya nendriya, nendriya artheshu nendriyartheshu karmasu anushajjate karmasvanushajjate. Right? Yoga arudha yoga arudha tada arudhas tada tada uchyate tadochyate. There are a few sandhis. See, a u becomes o, arudha ta becomes arudhas ta, just like how namahate becomes namaste. Right? So very few commonly seen sandhi patterns. Now we will unjumble these word by word breakdown, right? We unjumble them, get the proper prose order. The prose order reads like this. Yada na indriya artheshu nahi karmasu anushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi tada yoga rudaha uchyate. I think I should stop telling beautiful, right? Because all of them are beautiful, right? So let us see what it means. We have to click on dictionary. 1 second. We click on the dictionary link. Hey Arjuna, yada, as and when, na indriya artheshu, not in the not for the sake of sense gratification, nahi karmasu, not in any specific task, not intended in any specific task, anushajjate, gets attached, okay, follows. Anu is basically something like a follow. Anushajjate. Sajjate is basically sajjate, like one who gets attached, gets fixed. Okay, when you don't get fixed in a specific work or for a particular sense gratification, that's what he means. when you're the type of a person who does not have any special affixation towards a particular work or a particular type of sense gratification. Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi, the one who has given up all resolves, all types of resolutions, all desires in the mind. Tada Yoga Rudaha Uchyate. Then he will be called Yoga Rudaha. Then he will be called somebody who has ascended the top of yoga. Right? This is nice, right? Some time ago he said, without sankalpa, sannyasa sankalpa, you cannot become a yogi. Right? You need to have a desire to reach the top, and at the top you lose the desire. Like you don't have any desire because you have already reached where you need to be. You don't have any more desire. You just need to stay there. Keep on burning, 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 burning. Just stay there. So you give up all your sankalpa, all your desires. See, again, sankalpa is also important because when we look at, some of us do the study of Manusmriti, right? Every Sunday, we meet the same time, 8 o'clock, to study Manusmriti under a different club, right? So in Manusmriti, we hear, sankalpa moolah kamo vai. The root of all sankalpa, root of all mental resolutions is desire. Even moksha, even we have to get moksha, you have to have the desire to become mukti, right? Mumukshu, we call that word as mukshu. But if you go higher and higher and higher and higher, at the top, you don't have any more desire. You have reached the top. You just need to stay there. And to stay there, you need to have that proper self-control. And that goes in an iterative cycle, right? You constantly push up, push up, push up, push up. So, sankalpa moolah kamo vai. All sankalpa has originated in desire. And yajna, all our yajnartha karma is also sankalpa sambhavaha. They are also born out of sankalpa. They are also born out of resolutions only. So basically, our yajna has a sankalpa. Sankalpa is rooted in the desire. And one who does not have any desire, one who does not have, I need to do this work, I need to do that work, I don't have any specific inclination towards A or B type of a work, or I don't have any kind of a special penchant to get to this line of sense gratification or the other type of sense gratification. Like no indriya artheshu anushajyate, no specific karmasu anushajyate. There is no specific karma in which I want to get attached. There is no particular sense organ that I want to keep on gratifying. Right? The one who has given up all sarva sankalpa, sannyasi, the one who's renounced all types of desires, all types of resolutions. Okay, at the top, you don't see. This is also interesting because I think a little bit of jumping the gun, but I think in the next chapter there is a beautiful term that comes. I won't say what the term is, but basically Shankara Bhashya, Shankara Bhagavad-Pada, he has given a beautiful explanation for raga and kama. See, kama is basically attachment over something that we don't have yet. Kama, desiring something, basically means I'm attached to something that I currently don't have. But having attachment over something that I already possess, something that is mine, is called raga. So thin line difference between sankalpa and so sankalpa, right? So when you want to become aru rukshu, when you want to reach the top, you have the desire to be there. Once you reach the top, all we need to do is just stay there. So no more desire, right? The desire ceases to be. There is no more kama. Without kama, there is no yajna, there is no sankalpa also. It's an autopilot mode. That's the way we have to understand, right? So let's see what Aurobindo translation says. But basically, explaining the yoga ruda sthiti. Yoga ruda sthiti is basically I don't have any particular desire to do A or B or C type of a work. I don't have any resolutions anymore. I don't have any more mental resolves to do anything. I am already in that autopilot state to be the Brahmanya Adhina, like being under the Brahma Parabrahma Tattva and keep performing my actions, whatever I'm doing. It keeps going on. When we hear the stories of Sai Baba, I think mindlessly he was grinding the wheat flour day in, day out. He was just doing that. It was just autopilot. When people ask him, why are you doing this? He had no answer for it. Right? So he just kept on doing it. I mean, that's what we get to hear when we hear stories from Sai Satcharita and things like that. Right? So That's the autopilot state, right? So let us see what Aurobindo interprets for this shloka. When one does not get attached to the objects of sense or to any specific tasks or works and has renounced all will of desire in the mind, then he is said to have become yoga rudaha or ascended in the top of the yoga. That's the state, right? In the yoga ruda. Now, again, this is an ideal state. Who has achieved that state? We don't know. We might recall stories of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Sai Baba. We can recall some of the instances, some of the gurus, the way we understand them. Some people might call it as hagiographies. Some people call it as biographies. It's a thin line difference, right? It's about what we believe in. So if somebody has really reached that state of samadhi, ultimate state of samabuddhi, it's only up for speculation based on the belief systems that we possess, right? We really don't know what's the story behind it at the end of the day, right? So, but what we should not miss out is the theoretical definition that has been laid out by Krishna. That cannot go wrong. Whether this has been experienced, witnessed, seen in others, it's all bound to our level of belief. Whether we call those life circumstances like the way I was quoting, Sai Baba. Some people might quote some other Swamiji. It's a very thin line whether we call it the hagiographies or the biographies, right? So, but technically, the condition laid out by Krishna is flawless. Yoga Rudha is that state where you have no more resolution. You no more have any mental wills or desires or resolves, right? You just cease to be and stay there. Keep doing whatever you're doing for whatever good it is, right? Bhagavad-Adina, under completely subservient to the Bhagavan. That takes us to the next shloka, shloka number 5, one of the most popular shlokas of Bhagavad-Gita. It reads like this. Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuratmaiva ripuratmanah. Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuratmaiva ripuratmanah. When we do the padacheda, we get uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atma evahi atmanah bandhuhu atma evahi atmanah ripuhu ripuhu atmanah. What does the unjumbled set of words give us? Anvaya. Atmana atmanam uddharet. Full stop. Atmana atmanam na avasadayet. Full stop. He atma eva atmanah bandhuhu. Full stop. He atma eva atmanah ripuhu. Full stop. 4 sentences. What does that mean? Atmana atmanam uddharet. Now this is something that we need to note. From here, I think throughout this chapter we hear the word Atma multiple times. Now it makes sense to quickly give some thought to the word Atma. Adatte iti Atma, the one that receives. Right? Some of you might benefit by keeping a dictionary on hand. Okay, there is a app called Amara Kosha available. Make use of that and see what the word Atma throws up as a meaning. You will see the Monier-Williams dictionary, the Apte dictionary, the Kalpadruma. There are a lot of good things being given there, right? Make use of that. Atman. When you hear the word Atman, Atman can be soul, Atman can be self, Atman can be body, the mind, the effort, the firmness, dhriti, the sun, the fire. Okay, it can be many things. It's the Jivatma, Paramatma. There are different ways in which we can understand. Manas can be Atma, Hridaya can be Atma, okay, Buddhi can be Atma. There are many ways in which, because they all receive. At the end of the day, they all adatte. Adatte iti Atma. They receive. The Kshetrajna, Purusha, Bhava, Swa, the self, the energy, the experience, the expression. They are all. Brahma is also Atma, Parabrahma, Paramatma. So Atma can mean multiple things. And for the sake of ease of understanding, I think this website might do that. Higher self, lower self. Okay, not here. I think at one point in time, many translations will tend to then see do the control of the higher self for the something like that. We will see the higher self, lower self. But at the end of the day, it's all the self. Atma is basically something that receives. Right? Let's see what this sloka means. We click on the dictionary. Atmana atmanam uddharet. आत्म से आत्म को उद्धार करो. Okay, you shall always, improve yourself by yourself. Okay, never look at anything otherwise, right? So you shall always seek to uplift yourself by yourself. And this is a uddharet. When we hear the word uddharet, we have to understand this is coming like a commandment. This is a little more didactic. Words that sound like this, right? Uddharet. We heard a few words in the third adhyaya. In the third adhyaya, we heard, na prasiddhyet, like, akarmanaha te sharira yatra na prasiddhyet. Your life journey shall never get famous or infamous for inaction, right? Na prasiddhyet. Don't get famous for inaction in your life journey. See, some of these are the very handful set of didactic commandments given by Sri Krishna. There are altogether 18 such commandments in the entire Bhagavad-Gita, right? These 18 will, when we look into them as a holistic set, they alone can perhaps help us understand the entire Bhagavad-Gita. Like we heard a few in the third chapter. We heard that na prasiddhyet, don't become prasiddha, don't become famous for akarmana, for inaction. Then he says, karma sanginam, ajnanam, na buddhi bhedam janayet. You shall never discriminate amongst those, less understanding, less discerning, ajnanam, the low knowledgeable, karma sanginam, materially inclined. Okay, karma sanginam. So the people who are materially inclined and less intelligent, don't do discrimination on them, which means whatever they are doing, you join hands with them and then help them in that fashion, right? So don't give unnecessary virtue signaling. Is what Krishna said. Sarva karmani joshaye. Add josh, add that zest, that mojo in every action. Just don't do things for the heck of it. Like, do it very, very nicely. So these are all commandments given by Krishna. Like, he also says, akritna vido mandan. Those deluded people who don't know the full picture. Kritna with, the one who knows the full picture. Na vichalayet. Never, threaten them, never displace them. Rather, na vichalayet is basically never displace them from their path. Let them. You can't go unnecessarily. Pull them down. You have to, like he said in the previous line, add your 2 cents in that activity. Like, so, and then in the fourth adhyaya we hear that, karmani akarma pashyet. Look for play in your work and look for work in your play. Like, pashyet. Like, it's all didactic commandment. He's giving a ajnata. Like, he's this is all ajnata. Like, they are all given like, commandments. Like, you shall do this. Okay, so in the fifth adhyaya we saw that, na prahrushyet, priyam prapya na prahrushyet. Like, having got something pleasant, don't jump up in joy. You shall never jump up in joy once you obtain something desirable. Okay, apriyam prapya na udvijet. Nor shall you lose your head when you, obtain something non-desirable. When you get something regrettable, don't lose it. Like, and equally, don't jump up, when you get something nice. So you got to have that balance with you. Like, you should be the samabuddhi. So these are some of the didactic, some of those commandment type lines being used by Krishna. And now we see a couple of them. Uddharet, you shall uddhar. Uddhara is basically, improve, right? Uddhara is basically something you deliver, like, you improve upon something. Like, so you shall always look to, keep up yourself, uplift yourself by your own self. Okay, so when we put this line in a poster in front of us every morning, I think we should do that. Atmana atmanam uddharet. तुम अपने आप से अपने अपने आप को उद्धार करो. Always. That's like a commandment. Every day we have to remind ourselves because we tend to go weak. We tend to, that masochistic attitude seeps in. Once in a while, it just creeps into our self. Like we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to be masochistic. Like we can't do self harm. We shouldn't do that. Like, you shall always uplift yourself by your own self. Atmana Atmanam na avasadayet, nor shall you pull yourself down by your own self. Avasadayet, nor shall you pull yourself down or cast yourself down, nor shall you depress yourself down. You will never let yourself down. You will always lift yourself. Two things, right? Not just the first thing, also the second one is important. Never put yourself down. Always uplift yourself. That's the two lines, right? Now, how does it pan out in the overall messaging? Right? Arjuna's question is, what is great for me? Right? What is great for me? Finally, after explaining the sannyasa, right, which is the yoga yukta sannyasa, and then helping him understand how to achieve that yoga yukta sannyasa by pledging yourself for the Brahmi sthiti. If Brahmi sthiti was the externalization, which is the external purification, then he also explains the Brahma nirvana sthiti, the internalization of that. Now we are headed towards a chapter where the techniques for internalizations will be revealed. But in this section, I think primarily he is explaining that yata chittatma sthiti. Like, the properly engaged self, how does that person look like? In that, the first thing that he says is, yoga and sannyasa are the same. You can't be a sannyasi without fire. You can't be a yogi without the sannyasa sankalpa. Right? What is known as sannyasa itself is yoga. And one leads into the other. Like if you want to really climb up the path of yoga, action is important. And if you want to stay in that ascended state of yoga, shama, renunciation is important. Mind control cannot happen without renunciation. We will come to that, more of it. And then once telling that logical thing as to how this actually pans out, now he's telling, don't ask me this question, what is Shreyaskara for me? Okay, you asked me n number of times, precisely 3 times, the second chapter, third chapter, and the 5th chapter. Look for it yourself. You have a choice. Never shall you let yourself down. Always seek to uplift yourself. This choice is yours. And then he goes on to explain the second line. Atma, he indeed. Atma hi atmana bandhuhu. Atma eva atmanaha bandhuhu. You yourself are your own self, friend. You alone can be your own friend. And Atma hi eva atmanaha ripuhu. And also, equally, you alone can also be your own enemy. Both friend and enemy you have is inside you. I think some of us who attended Aurobindoji under this Jataveda club, right? He took us this discourse on Katakopanishad, right? Katopanishad. Asuriya namate lokaha andhena tamasavritah. So I think something like that, that Asurya named Loka, which is completely shrouded in darkness. Tante pretyabhigachanti. Okay, people reach that place. Okay, yete chat mahano janaha. Those who haven't understood their own self. Like people who reach the world of darkness are the ones who haven't really understood themselves. That's the line that comes in Katakopanishad, right? Very beautifully. I think Aurobindoji gave a very beautiful explanation in that session, right? I think the replays are available. I think they have also uploaded some of those talks on the YouTube channel. But basically, Krishna is telling, Arjuna, you have asked me several times now, what is Shreyaskara for me? Okay, I think you decide. No, the simple thing I can tell you is that you shall always look to uplift yourself. You shall never pull yourself down. For you can only be your own friend. You alone can be your own enemy. You decide. Right? Then, and this is the prelude given before revealing the techniques. Right? But nonetheless, the first 10 shlokas, I think he is establishing the concept before coming to the techniques. Techniques will come after 10 shlokas. right? For dhyana, the techniques will come a little later. Let's see what Aurobindo reads from the shloka quickly. The Aurobindo interpretation of the shloka, it reads like this. By the self thou shouldst, okay, I don't know how to read this. By your own self you shall deliver yourself, and you shall not depress and cast down yourself, whether by self-indulgence or suppression. I think that's a additional opinion. For yourself is the friend of yourself, and yourself is the enemy, in brackets, of yourself. In simple English, I think if I try to put it in my simple way, okay, you shall always seek to uplift yourself by your own self, and you shall always seek to never put yourself down, for you shall alone be your own friend and your own enemy too. Right? That's the interpretation we should draw, or we can draw. Should is a very heavy word, right? Because there are different interpretations we can always draw, but we'll keep it simple. So with that, we move on to shloka number 6. So this is one of the most popular. Please by heart that you can quote it in many instances, right? Now he explains. He explained. He said that for you yourself can be your friend and enemy, right? And how does that happen? Okay, he explains that in the next shloka. On the top of the page, click on next. We land in shloka number 6. बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्. So बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्. The padacheda, okay, the word by word breakdown. Bandhuhu atma atmanaha tasya yena atma eva atmana jitaha anatmanaha tu shatrutve varteta atma eva shatruvat. What does that look like when we unjumble into a prose order? Hey Arjuna, yena atmana atma jitaha tasya atmanah atma eva bandhuhu anatmanah tu atma eva shatruvat shatrutve varteta. Okay, what does that mean? Sounds nice, right? So when we look into the dictionary for getting the meaning of it, hey Arjuna, yena atmana atma jitaha, by whom, okay, by whose atma, his own atma has been won over. Now the translation is looking at higher self and lower self. Let's forget the higher lower part. If you can win over your own self, simple, by whom his own self has been won over by his own self. Okay, if you can win over yourself, just if you can understand self mastery, if you can have your own self control. Okay, tasya atmanaha atma eva bandhuhu. Okay, of that self, his atma alone is his friend. His self indeed is his friend. Right? Now here is where I think we can always look at the higher and the lower should be understood as we saw this, right? In the 3rd chapter, we saw a sequence of words being told. Para, 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 para. What is higher than the other? No. From the indriyas, the manas is higher. From the manas, the mind, the buddhi, the intellect is higher. From the buddhi, the atma, antaratma, the self is higher. From the self, paramatma is higher. There is always a higher lower. So whenever you have a higher lower, take any random higher tattva, okay, and put any random lower tattva corresponding. Like you can put manas as the higher tattva, indriyas as the lower tattva, which means by whose mind his senses have been won over. For him, his mind is a shatru. Sorry, mitra, bandhu. His mind is the friend of his indriyas. Okay, or rather, you take the relationship of manas and the buddhi. By whose buddhi his manas has been won over. For him, his buddhi is the friend to his manas. Or look at it this way. by whose Atma, by his own vasanas and his buddhi has been controlled. Okay, for him, his Atma is the friend of the buddhi. Or look at it the higher way. For whom, by his Paramatma, the Atma, Antaratma has been controlled. For him, that Paramatma is the friend of the Atma. Look at it in multiple ways. Right? It falls perfectly. Nice. Right? Bandhu. And similarly, Anatmanahatu, to him who is not in possession of his self, and who is not self-controlled, to Atma eva Shatruvat. His own self will, his own higher self will behave like an enemy. Shatrutve varteta. It behaves in enmity. It acts in hostility. Right? It indulges in enmity or hostility. Right? Let's see what, and this is the explanation, because he explained in the previous shloka, he made a statement, right? Your own self can be your own enemy, your own self can be your own friend. Now, the simple task is, if you have self-control, yourself can be your own self's friend. If you don't have self-control, your own self can be your own self's enemy, which means you can go indulgent into unnecessary frivolous tasks, and that is where you lose your purpose of life. You will lose your focus in life. You will not reach anywhere higher. If you want to really reach higher, that is what you've been asking. See, Arjuna, for all the despondency he shows as a behavior, deep inside he has a desire to go higher. That is where he kept on worried about, sounding worried about Shreya, Shreya, Shreya. Nacha Shreyo, no Pashyami, Hatva Swajanamahve. For him to even think about giving up the war is because he saw no Shreyas, nothing great coming his way by continuing in that war. And then he repeatedly asked Krishna the same question, Yena Shreyoham Apnuyam, by which I shall get higher and higher. Right? I shall reach greatness. Tell me what will take me great. What will make me great was the constant question. And that is something that we need to laud about Arjuna. I think that is something that we all need to possess as well. If not, I think the yoga is useless. We don't need yoga if you don't have the fundamental desire to even go higher and higher. Right? So that becomes completely unrequired. So let's see. So Krishna now explains, if you have self-control, your self is your own friend. If you don't have self-control, your own self will become your enemy and will completely act in hostility for you. Right? That's what Krishna says. Let's see what Aurobindo interpretation stands for this shloka. To the man is his self a friend in whom the lower self has been conquered by the higher self. But to him who is not in possession of his higher self, the lower self is an enemy and acts as an enemy. Okay, acts in enmity. Shatrutva is basically enmity. Right? So some interpretation, and then we can ignore the higher lower part. I think unnecessarily give us confusion. If you're comfortable, take it. If not, just leave it. Keep it very, very simple. If you have self-control, you are your own friend. If you don't have self-control, you are your own enemy, and you will act in enmity for your own good. You will act in hostility for your own good. Simple understanding, right? Let's click on next now. We click on next. We'll go to the 7th shloka. It reads like this. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha mana apamanayo. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha mana apamanayo. Very beautiful. Right? Let's see what the Padacheda, the word by word breakdown, tells us. Right? Jita atmanaha prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shita ushna sukha dukkheshu tatha mana apamanayo. Right? What does that give when we unjumble them into a prose order? The Anvaya section, hey Arjuna, shita ushna sukha dukkheshu तथा माना अपमानयोः जित आत्मनः प्रशान्तस्य परम आत्मा समाहितः. What is the advantage of getting your self-control? No, yenatma jitaha, right? Yenatma, bandhuratmat manastasya yenatmaivatmana jitah, yena atmana eva atma jitah, yenatmaivatmana jitah. Like, anatmanastu shatrutve. So he says, if you can conquer your own self by yourself, if you can gain self mastery, if you can gain self control. That's what we saw in the sixth shloka. Here he says the advantage of that. See, look at the way, the nice logical continuity that Krishna threads in this entire narrative, right? So he says, hey Arjuna, Shita Ushna Sukha Dukkheshu. Shita is cold, Ushna is hot. You click on the dictionary, Shita Ushna, in cold and in heat. Sukha Dukkheshu, in Sukha and in Dukkha, in pleasure and in pain, in happiness and in sorrow. Sukha is happiness, Dukkha is sorrow. In hot and cold situations, in happy and sorrowful situations, and in mana apamana yo situations. Mana is honorable situation, apamana is dishonorable situation. Jita atmanaha, one who has controlled his self. Now see, when I said higher self, sometime back I said the higher self can be the respective higher antakarana, the inner instrument, right? It can be the intellect, it can be the mind, it can be the ahankara also, the vasanas and things like that, right? The tendencies. It can be anything, right? Now here he gives a very beautiful Shita Ushna, right? It's a discriminatory understanding. What is hot and what is cold? There is no two ways about it. Whether it's Vijayji or myself, when something is hot, both of us are likely to say it is hot. And when something is cold, both of us will say this is cold. A masala dosa is hot, an ice cream is cold, right? It is. There is no personal judgment there. It's a discrimination. It's a proper buddhi. It's a faculty of the intellect. Shita Ushna is an understanding of the intellect. Sukha Dukkha, happiness and sorrow, is the understanding of the mind. The mind is the one which is processing the pleasure, pain, the experiences of the indriya. Right? So Sukha Dukkha is the experience of the mind. Right? Mind is the one that says happiness and sorrow. And here is where what I see as happy may not be seen the same way by Vijayji. And what I see as dukkha, sorrow, may not be seen the same way by Vijayji. Because my manas and his manas, we are processing different indriyas. My indriya experiences are different. His indriya experiences are different. Right? But what is hot, what is cold is the same. We know, okay, sun is hot, moon is cold. At least the experience, okay, we don't have to really experience it, we know it. Because our buddhi, logical, it's a logical faculty. And mana apamana, okay, where I will be honored and where I will be dishonored, where my pride is intact and where my pride is threatened, right? Where my vanity is uplifted, where my vanity is squashed, right? That is the faculty of the ahankara, the ego. Look beautifully, there are three higher antakaranas, right? The manas is one higher antakarana, atma. Buddhi is the next higher antakarana, higher atma. Ahankara is the next higher antakarana, higher atma. He is talking about all three. Okay, all three experiences of your buddhi, manas, and the ahankara. If you can jitatmana, if you can win that atma, if you can win your manas, if you can win your buddhi, if you can win your ahankara, prashantasya, that shamata, prakarshanena, that enlightening kind of a shanta, not just a simple shanta, right? Through that mastery, self mastery, the one who has attained amazingly enlightening calmness. Prashantasya, tasya, Paramatma Samahitaha. Parama the Supreme Atma. The Buddhi, Manas, Ahankara on one side. The Supreme Atma is much higher. A person who has controlled all three of these higher Atmas, what we know within ourselves, understand him to be completely well founded in that Paramatma, Parabrahma, Brahmistiti, the proper Brahmistiti that he kept on explaining in the previous chapter. Right? So, very beautifully explained by Krishna. And whenever he uses these similes, the examples, I think very well thought through examples. Let's see what Aurobindo makes out of this interpretation. When one has conquered one's self and attained to the calm of a perfect self-mastery and self-possession, then is a supreme self in a man, founded and poised, even in his outwardly conscious human being. In cold and heat situations, in pleasure and pain situations, as well as in honor and dishonorably situations. Right? So, my buddhi, my ahankara, my manas, they stay equipoised. Right? Sloka number 7. I think let's stop here. I think we have seen enough. 2, 1. Namaste Vasudevaya Preyasa me Priyottama Samasta Guna Sampurna Nirdosha Nandadayane Mukopi Yat Prasadena Mukunda Shayanayate Raja Rajayate Rikto Raghavendram Tamashraye Bharati Ramana Mukhya Pranam Tarada Shri Gopala Krishna Priyatam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend today, tomorrow. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai
Jai
Shri
Shri